here again for Bedtime Stories for Tiny Microbes with Bob and some of his friends. Bob has changed containers because we are currently trying to feed Bob to get him into shape to do some baking for us this weekend. So he's been moving around quite frequently the last couple days from jar to jar. So today we're going to pick back up with the story of Dr. Dolittle. And in case you missed the first 4 chapters, you can catch the recorded video from last night, or you can go and read them yourself and then come back here and listen to me read from the 5th chapter on. So we're going to start at chapter 5 of the story of Dr. Dolittle by Hugh Lofting. The 5th chapter, The Great Journey. Now, for 6 whole weeks, they went sailing on and on, over the rolling sea, following the swallow, who flew before the ship to show them the way. At night, she carried a tiny lantern, so they should not miss her in the dark. And the people on the other ships that passed said that the light must be a shooting star. As they sailed further and further into the south, it got warmer and warmer. Polynesia, Chi-Chi, and the crocodile enjoyed the hot sun no end. They ran about, laughing and looking over the side of the ship to see if they could see Africa yet. But the pig and the dog and the owl Tutu could do nothing in such weather, but sat at the end of the ship in the shade of a big barrel, with their tongues hanging out, drinking lemonade. Dab-Dab, the duck, used to keep herself cool by jumping into the sea and swimming behind the ship. And every once in a while, when the top of her head got too hot, she would dive under the ship and come up on the other side. In this way, too, she used to catch herrings on Tuesdays and Fridays, when everybody on the boat ate fish to make the beef last longer. When they got near to the equator, they saw some flying fishes coming toward them, and the fishes asked the parrot if this was Dr. Dolittle's ship. When she told them it was, they said they were glad, because the monkeys in Africa were getting worried that he would never come. Polynesia asked them how many miles they had yet to go, and the flying fishes said it was only 55 miles now to the coast of Africa. And another time, a whole school of porpoises came dancing through the waves, and they too asked Polynesia if this was the ship of the famous doctor. And when they heard that it was, they asked the parrot if the doctor wanted anything for his journey. And Polynesia said, "Yes, we have run short of onions." Oh, thanks. "There is an island not far from here," said the porpoises, "where the wild onions grow tall and strong. Keep straight on. We will get some and catch up to you." So the porpoises dashed away through the sea, and very soon the parrot saw them again, coming up behind, dragging the onions through the waves in big nets made of seaweed. The next evening, excuse me, as the sun was going down, the doctor said, "Get me the telescope, Chi-Chi. Our journey has been nearly ended. Very soon we should be able to see the shores of Africa." And about half an hour later, sure enough, they thought they could see something in front that might be land. But it began to get darker and darker, and they couldn't be sure. Then a great storm came up with thunder and lightning. The wind howled, the rain came down in torrents, and the waves got so high they splashed right over the boat. Presently, there was a big bang, and the ship stopped and rolled over on its side. "What happened?" asked the doctor, coming up from downstairs. "I'm not sure," said the parrot, "but I think we're shipwrecked. Tell the duck to get out and see." So Dab-Dab dived right down under the waves, and when she came up, she said they had struck a rock. There was a big hole in the bottom of the ship. The water was coming in, and they were sinking fast. "We must have run into Africa," said the doctor. Dear me. Well, we must all swim to land." But Chi-Chi and Gub-Gub did not know how to swim, but all of the other animals did. Get the rope, said Polynesia. I told you it would come in handy. Where's that duck? Come here, Dab Dab. Take this end of the rope, fly to the shore and tie it onto a palm tree, and we'll hold the other end on the ship here. Then those that can't swim must climb along the rope till they reach the land. That's what you call a lifeline. So they all got safely to the shore, some swimming, some flying, and those that climbed along the rope brought the doctor's trunk and handbag with them. But the ship was no good anymore, with a big hole in the bottom, and presently the rough sea beat it to pieces on the rocks, and the timbers floated away. Then they all took shelter in a nice dry cave they found, high up in the cliffs, till the storm was over. When the sun came out next morning, they went down to the sandy beach to dry themselves. Dear old Africa, sighed Polynesia. It's good to get back. Just think, it'll be 169 years tomorrow since I was here, and it hasn't changed a bit. Same old palm trees, same red earth, same old black ants. There's no place like home. And the others noticed she had tears in her eyes. She was so pleased to see her country once again. Then the doctor missed his high hat, for it had been blown into the sea during the storm. So Dab Dab went out to look for it, and presently she saw it, a long way off, floating on the water like a toy boat. When she flew down to get it, she found one of the white mice, very frightened, sitting inside it. What are you doing here? Asked the duck. You were told to stay behind in Puddleby.
I didn't want to be left behind,
said the mouse.
I wanted to see what Africa was like. I have relatives there. So I hid in the baggage and was brought onto the ship with the hardtack. When the ship sank, I was terribly frightened because I cannot swim far. I swam as long as I could, but I soon got all exhausted and thought I was going to sink. And then, just at that moment, the old man's hat came floating by, and I got into it because I did not want to be drowned.
So the duck took up the hat with the mouse in it and brought it to the doctor on the shore. And they all gathered round to have a look. That's what you call a stowaway, said the parrot. Presently, when they were looking for a place in the trunk where the white mouse could travel comfortably, the monkey Chi-Chi suddenly said, Shh! I hear footsteps in the jungle. They all stopped talking and listened, and soon a black man came down out of the woods and asked them what they were doing there. My name is John Dolittle, M.D., said the doctor. I have been asked to come to Africa to cure the monkeys who are sick. You must all come before the king, said the black man. What king? Asked the doctor, who didn't want to waste any time. The king of Jolijinki, the man answered. All these lands belong to him, and all strangers must be brought before him. Follow me. So they gathered up their baggage and went off, following the man through the jungle. The 6th chapter, Polynesia and the King. When they had gone a little way through the thick forest, they came to a wide, clear space, and they saw the king's palace, which was made of mud. This was where the king lived with his queen, Ermentrude, and their son, Prince Bumpo. The prince was away fishing for salmon in the river, but the king and the queen were sitting under an umbrella before the palace door, and Queen Ermentrude was asleep. When the doctor had come up to the palace, the king asked him his business, and the doctor told him why he had come to Africa. You may not travel through my lands, said the king. Many years ago, a white man came to these shores, and I was very kind to him. But after he had dug holes in the ground to get the gold, and killed all the elephants to get their ivory tusks, he went away secretly in his ship, without so much as saying thank you. Never again shall a white man travel through the lands of Jolijinki. Then the king turned to some of the black men who were standing near and said, Take away this medicine man with all his animals and lock them up in my strongest prison. So 6 of the black men led the doctor and all his pets away and shut them up in a stone dungeon. The dungeon had only one little window, high up in the wall, with bars in it, and the door was strong and thick. Then they all grew very sad, and Gub-Gub the pig began to cry. But Chi-Chi said he would spank him if he didn't stop that horrible noise, and he kept quiet. Are we all here? Asked the doctor, after he got used to the dim light. Yes, I think so, said the duck, and started to count them. Where's Polynesia? Asked the crocodile. She isn't here. Are you sure? Said the doctor. Look again. Polynesia? Polynesia, where are you? I suppose she escaped, grumbled the crocodile. Well, that's just like her, sneaked off into the jungle as soon as her friends got into trouble. I'm not that kind of a bird, said the parrot, climbing out of the pocket in the tail of the doctor's coat. You see, I'm small enough to get through the bars of that window, and I was afraid they would put me in a cage instead. So while the king was busy talking, I hid in the doctor's pocket, and here I am. That's what you call a ruse, she said, smoothing down her feathers with her beak. Good gracious, cried the doctor. You're lucky I didn't sit on you. Now listen, said Polynesia. Tonight, as soon as it gets dark, I'm going to creep through the bars of that window and fly over to the palace. And then, you'll see, I'll soon find a way to make the king let us all out of prison. Oh, what can you do? Said Gub-Gub, turning up his nose and beginning to cry again. You're only a bird. Quite true, said the parrot. But do not forget that although I am only a bird, I can talk like a man, and I know these people. So that night, when the moon was shining through the palm trees and all the king's men were asleep, the parrot slipped out through the bars of the prison and flew across to the palace. The pantry window had been broken by a tennis ball the week before, and Polynesia popped in through the hole in the glass. She heard Prince Bumpo snoring in his bedroom at the back of the palace. Then she tiptoed up the stairs till she came to the king's bedroom. She opened the door gently and peeped in. The queen was away to dance that night at her cousin's, but the king was in bed, fast asleep. Polynesia crept in, very softly, and got under the bed. Then she coughed, just the way Dr. Dolittle used to cough. Polynesia could mimic anyone. The king opened his eyes and said sleepily, Is that you, Ermentrude? He thought it was the queen come back from the dance. Then the parrot coughed again, loud, like a man. And the king sat up wide awake and said, Who's that? I am Dr. Dolittle, said the parrot, just the way the doctor would have said it. What are you doing in my bedroom? Cried the king. How dare you get out of prison? Where are you? I don't see you. But the parrot just laughed, a long, deep, jolly laugh, like the doctor's. Stop laughing and come here at once so I can see you, said the king. Foolish king, answered Polynesia. Have you forgotten that you are talking to John Dolittle, M.D., the most wonderful man on earth? Of course you cannot see me. I have made myself invisible. There is nothing I cannot do. Now listen, I have come here tonight to warn you. If you don't let me and my animals travel through your kingdom, I will make you and all your people sick, like the monkeys. For I can make people well, and I can make people ill, just by raising my little finger. Send your soldiers at once to open the dungeon door, or you shall have mumps before the morning sun has risen on the hills of Jolly Jinky. Then the king began to tremble and was very much afraid. Doctor, he cried, it shall be as you say. Do not raise your little finger, please. And he jumped out of bed and ran to tell the soldiers to open the prison door. As soon as he was gone, Polynesia crept downstairs and left the palace by the pantry window. But the queen, who was just letting herself in at the back door with a latchkey, saw the parrot getting out through the broken glass. And when the king came back to bed, she told him what she had seen. Then the king understood that he had been tricked, and he was dreadfully angry. He hurried back to the prison at once, but he was too late. The door stood open. The dungeon was empty. The doctor and all his animals were gone. The 7th chapter, The Bridge of Apes. Queen Ermentrude had never in her life seen her husband so terrible as he got that night. He gnashed his teeth with rage. He called everybody a fool. He threw his toothbrush at the palace cat. He rushed round in his nightshirt and woke up all his army and sent them into the jungle to catch the doctor. Then he made all his servants go too. His cooks and his gardeners and his barber and Prince Bumpo's tutor, even the queen, who was tired from dancing in a pair of tight shoes, was packed off to help the soldiers in their search. All this time, the doctor and his animals were running through the forest towards the land of the monkeys as fast as they could go. Gub-Gub, with his short legs, soon got tired, and the doctor had to carry him, which made it pretty hard when they had the trunk and the handbag with them as well. The king of Jolly Jinky thought it would be easy for his army to find them because the doctor was in a strange land and would not know his way. But he was wrong, because the monkey Chi-Chi knew all the paths through the jungle, better even than the king's men did, and he led the doctor and his pets to the very thickest part of the forest, a place where no man had ever been before, and hid them all in a big hollow tree between high rocks. "We had better wait here," said Chi-Chi, "till the soldiers have gone back to bed. Then we can go into the land of the monkeys." So there they stayed the whole night through. They often heard the king's men searching and talking in the jungle roundabout, but they were quite safe, for no one knew of that hiding place but Chi-Chi, not even the other monkeys. At last, when daylight began to come through the thick leaves overhead, they heard Queen Ermintrude saying in a very tired voice that it was no use looking any more, and that they might as well go back and get some sleep. As soon as the soldiers had all gone home, Chi-Chi brought the doctor and his animals out of the hiding place, and they set off for the land of the monkeys. It was a long, long way, and they often got very tired, especially Gub-Gub. But when he cried, they gave him milk out of the coconuts, which he was very fond of. They always had plenty to eat and drink, because Chi-Chi and Polynesia knew all the different kinds of fruits and vegetables that grow in the jungle, and where to find them, like dates and figs and groundnuts and ginger and yams. They used to make their lemonade out of the juice of wild oranges, sweetened with honey, which they got from the bees' nests in hollow trees. No matter what it was they asked for, Chi-Chi and Polynesia always seemed to be able to get it for them, or something like it. They even got the doctor some tobacco one day when he had finished what he had brought for him and wanted to smoke. At night, they slept in tents made of palm leaves on thick, soft beds of dried grass. And after a while, they got used to walking such a lot, and did not get so tired, and enjoyed the life of travel very much. But they were always glad when the night came, and they stopped for their resting time. Then the doctor used to make a little fire of sticks, and after they had had their supper, they would sit round it in a ring, listening to Polynesia singing songs about the sea, or to Chi-Chi telling stories of the jungle. And many of the tales that Chi-Chi told were very interesting, because although the monkeys had no history books of their own before Dr. Dolittle came to write for them, they remember everything that happens by telling stories to their children. And Chi-Chi spoke of many things his grandmother had told him, tales of long, long, long ago, before Noah and the flood, of the days when men dressed in bearskins and lived in holes in the rock and ate their mutton raw because they did not know what cooking was, having never seen a fire. And he told them of the great mammoths and lizards, as long as a train, that wandered over the mountains in those times, nibbling from the treetops. And often they got so interested in listening that when he had finished, they found their fire had gone right out, and they had to scurry round to get more sticks and build a new one. Now, when the king's army had gone back and told the king that they couldn't find the doctor, the king sent them out again and told them that they must stay in the jungle till they caught him. So all this time, while the doctor and his animals were going along toward the land of the monkeys, thinking themselves quite safe, they were still being followed by the king's men. If Chi-Chi had known this, he would have most likely hidden them again, but he didn't know it. One day, Chi-Chi climbed up a high rock and looked out over the treetops, and when he came down, he said they were now quite close to the land of the monkeys and would soon be there. And that same evening, sure enough, they saw Chi-Chi's cousin and a lot of other monkeys who had not yet got sick, sitting in the trees by the edge of a swamp, looking and waiting for them. And when they saw the famous doctor really come, these monkeys made a tremendous noise, cheering and waving leaves and swinging out of the branches to greet him. They wanted to carry his bag and his trunk and everything he had, and even one of the bigger ones even carried Gub-Gub, who had got tired again. Then two of them rushed on in front to tell the sick monkeys that the great doctor had come at last. But the king's men, who were still following, had heard the noise of the monkeys cheering, and they at last knew where the doctor was and hastened on to catch him. The big monkey carrying Gub-Gub was coming along behind slowly, and he saw the captain of the army sneaking through the trees. So he hurried after the doctor and told him to run. Then they all ran harder than they had ever run in their lives, and the king's men, coming after them, began to run too, and the captain ran hardest of all. Then the doctor tripped over his own medicine bag and fell down in the mud, and the captain thought he would surely catch him this time. But the captain had very long ears, although his hair was very short, and as he sprang forward to take hold of the doctor, one of his ears caught fast in a tree, and the rest of the army had to stop and help him. By this time, the doctor had picked himself up, and on they went again, running and running, and Chi-Chi shouted, "It's all right, we haven't far to go now." But before they could get into the land of the monkeys, they came to a steep cliff with a river flowing below. This was the end of the kingdom of Jolly Jinky, and the land of the monkeys was on the other side, across the river. And Jip the dog looked down over the edge of the steep, steep cliff and said, "Golly, how are we ever going to get across?" "Oh dear," said Gub-Gub. "The king's men are quite close now. Look at them. I am afraid we are going to be taken back to prison again." And he began to weep. But the big monkey who was carrying the pig dropped him on the ground and cried out to the other monkeys, "Boys, a bridge! Quick, make a bridge. We've only a minute to do it. They've got the captain loose, and he's coming on like a deer. Get lively! A bridge! A bridge!" The doctor began to wonder what they were going to make a bridge out of, and he gazed around to see if they had any boards hidden any place. But when he looked back at the cliff there, hanging across the river, was a bridge all ready for him, made of living monkeys. For while his back was turned, the monkeys, quick as a flash, had made themselves into a bridge just by holding hands and feet. And the big one shouted to the doctor, walk over, all of you, hurry!" Gub-Gub was a bit scared, walking on such a narrow bridge at that dizzy height above the river, but he got over all right, and so did all of them. John Dolittle was the last to cross, and just as he was getting to the other side, the king's men came rushing up to the edge of the cliff. Then they shook their fists and yelled with rage, for they saw they were too late. The doctor and all his animals were safe in the land of the monkeys, and the bridge was pulled across to the other side. Then Chi-Chi turned to the doctor and said, "Many great explorers and gray-bearded naturalists have lain long weeks hidden in the jungle, waiting to see the monkeys do that trick. But we never let a white man get a glimpse of it before. You are the first to see the famous Bridge of Apes." And the doctor felt very pleased. The 8th chapter, The Leader of the Lions. John Dolittle now became dreadfully, awfully busy. He found hundreds and thousands of monkeys sick. Gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, dog-faced baboons, marmosets, gray monkeys, red ones, all kinds. And many had died. The first thing he did was to separate the sick ones from the well ones. Then he got Chi-Chi and his cousin to build him a little house of grass. The next thing, he made all the monkeys who were still well come and be vaccinated. And for 3 days and 3 nights, the monkeys kept coming from the jungles and the valleys and the hills to the little house of grass, where the doctor sat all day and all night, vaccinating and vaccinating. Then he had another house made, a big one with a lot of beds in it, and he put all the sick ones in this house. but so many were sick, there were not enough well ones to do the nursing. So he sent messages to the other animals, like the lions and the leopards and the antelopes, to come and help with the nursing. But the leader of the lions was a very proud creature, and when he came to the doctor's big house full of beds, he seemed angry and scornful. "Do you dare ask me, sir," he said, glaring at the doctor, "do you dare to ask me, the king of the beasts, to wait on a lot of dirty monkeys? Why, I wouldn't even eat them between meals." Although the lion looked very terrible, the doctor tried hard not to seem afraid of him. "I didn't ask you to eat them," he said quietly. "And besides, they're not dirty. They've all had a bath this morning. Your coat looks as though it needed brushing. Badly. Now listen, and I'll tell you something. The day may come when the lions get sick. And if you don't help the other animals now, the lions may find themselves left all alone when they are in trouble. That often happens to proud people." "The lions are never in trouble. They only make trouble," said the leader, turning up his nose. And he stalked away into the jungle, feeling he had been rather smart and clever. Then the leopards got proud too and said they wouldn't help. And then, of course, the antelopes. Although they were too shy and timid to be rude to the doctor like the lion, they pawed the ground and smiled foolishly and said they had never been nurses before. And now the poor doctor was worried frantic, wondering where he would get help enough to take care of all these thousands of monkeys in bed. But the leader of the lions, when he got back to his den, saw his wife, the queen lioness, come running out to meet him with her hair untidy. "One of the cubs won't eat," she said. "I don't know what to do with him. He hasn't taken a thing since last night." And she began to cry and shake with nervousness, for she was a good mother, even though she was a lioness. So the leader went into his den and looked at his children, two very, very cunning little cubs lying on the floor, and one of them seemed quite poorly. Then the lion told his wife, quite proudly, just what he had said to the doctor, and she got so angry she nearly drove him out of the den. "You never did have a grain of sense," she screamed. "All the animals from here to the Indian Ocean are talking about this wonderful man, and how he can cure any kind of sickness, and how kind he is, the only man in the whole world who can talk the language of the animals. And now, when we have a sick baby on our hands, you must go and offend him, great booby. Nobody but a fool is ever rude to the good doctor. You," and she started pulling her husband's hair, "go back to that white man at once," she yelled, "and tell him you're sorry. And take all the other empty-headed lions with you, and those stupid leopards and antelopes. Then do everything the doctor tells you. Work hard, and perhaps he will be kind enough to come and see the cub later. Now be off. Hurry, I tell you. You're not fit to be a father." And she went into the den next door where another mother lion lived and told her all about it. So the leader of the lions went back to the doctor and said, "I'd happened to be passing this way and thought I'd look in. Got any help yet?" "No," said the doctor. "I haven't, and I'm dreadfully worried." "Help's pretty hard to get these days," said the lion. "Animals don't seem to want to work anymore. You can't blame them in a way. Well, seeing you're in difficulties, I don't mind doing what I can, just to oblige you, so long as I don't have to wash the creatures. And I've told all the other hunting animals to come and do their share. The leopards should be here any minute now. Oh, and by the way, we've got a sick cub at home. I don't think there's much the matter with him myself, but the wife is anxious. If you're around that way this evening, you might take a look at him, will you?" Then the doctor was very happy, for all the lions and the leopards and the antelopes and the giraffes and the zebras, all the animals of the forests and the mountains and the plains, came to help him in his work. There were so many of them that he had to send some away, and only kept the cleverest. And now very soon the monkeys began to get better. At the end of a week, The big house full of beds was half empty, and at the end of the second week, the last monkey had got well. Then the doctor's work was done, and he was so tired he went to bed and slept for 3 days without even turning over. So on that note, that's the end of the 8th chapter of the story of Dr. Dolittle. Again, if you are interested in catching up or continuing on reading, you would pick up the story of Dr. Dolittle by Hugh Lofting at the 9th chapter, The Monkey's Council. I was able to get a copy on my Kindle, so even though libraries might be closed, you can still get an electronic copy from the library, or of course you could probably purchase it somewhere online